Okay. A little bit of a rainy Thursday. A little bit. Just a little bit of a rainy Thursday. We have attorney Stephanie Murphy that's going to be joining us. Yep. Here we go. Let me check the connections. There we go. All right. Always a minor panic. Sound is good. Yep. And we are ready to roll. So that's good. X is good. Folks, stay dry today. My goodness. Let me check YouTube. Are you? Yes, we are live on YouTube.
Let me check YouTube.
Yes.
Are you? Yes, we are live on YouTube.
There we go. All right. Let me send this to. I think Gion's good though. Yep. And then let me check our Facebook. This afternoon, 3 to 4, excuse me, live on Fox Nation. This afternoon, streaming live 3 to 4. Tonight, Thursday night, it's going to rain all night. It's going to rain all afternoon into the night. Court TV live, 8 to 9, discussing North Providence FBI. No, actually discussing. Audio sounds good, says Gian. All right, no, actually say we're going to be discussing. What else would we be discussing? The Kare Read trial, of course. No court today. No court tomorrow, which is actually a really good thing. I am not upset that there's no court today or tomorrow. Folks, the case that just doesn't end. Again, the weather is, it's a rainy day. It's actually, the weather's lousy, right? I mean, the weather's just really lousy. So good afternoon to my friend John Boyle, who's visiting from the West Coast. You don't get this type of weather in Burbank. No, you don't. All right. Attorney Stephanie Murphy is going to be joining us. I will, let me say hi. This is Jane Rice. Good afternoon, folks, as we continue our climb towards the May goal for stars. Yes. Yes, it is, as a matter of fact. So right now we're not live on TikTok, but follow us on TikTok. Newsmax was yesterday. Make sure you follow. By the way, we have really good video of Cranston Police on our YouTube channel. I didn't put, it's also on TikTok. I didn't put it. You know, it's so difficult because each platform, I find it difficult. Each platform operates differently. So some things that are allowed on one platform are then frowned upon, if not penalized, on another platform. So, but we're going to talk to attorney Stephanie Murphy coming up. And we're not just going to talk about the Kare Read trial. We're also going to talk about, she was right. Stephanie called it. She called it as far as the North Kingstown, the naked fat test coach. She called that world, and he got a not guilty. He got a not guilty on the big charges. We're going to talk about the Kare Read trial, and also FBI questions North Providence fire officials. So Stephanie Murphy is going to be joining us again, folks, this afternoon. What we're going to do over the next hour is we're going to talk with attorney Stephanie Murphy. Then I will walk through who I thought, was just a really strong witness in the Kare Read retrial. Now, here's some breaking news that's not. Today is Thursday, May 22nd. Now, right now, we are live on X. We are live on YouTube. We're live on our Facebook pages, over 100,000 there. And then we are live on AM 1380, 99.9 FM. Plus, you can listen online at the website, depetro.com. And then follow us on TikTok. If you log on to depetro.com, you have links to all of our social media. And I use them for different purposes. So we're going to be live in just a moment And then I'm going to break down. I mean, I think the doctor was a really, really powerful witness. And I'll tell you why, but we'll walk things through first with Stephanie, folks, on what is a rainy Thursday. Let's hope that the weather turns around a little bit and then we don't have a complete washout for the Memorial Day weekend. Very good time to catch up, organizing things and things like that, although it does seem a little over the top. All right. So, folks, good afternoon. Right now, 106 on this Thursday. This part of our program, remember, if you ever have a legal situation, contact Marin, Barrett, and Murphy, criminal defense attorneys, 50 years combined Rhode Island criminal defense experience. And let me just explain. Many times people, you could fall into a situation and you're not sure. You may not realize that maybe you need legal advice. Sometimes people are dragged into situations. Sometimes people witness things. So why not call? Free consultation. Just mention you're a friend of the show. It's Marin, Barrett, and Murphy. Call them 401-228-8271. I really like their social media. They have a strong presence on Facebook and Instagram. Marin, Barrett, and Murphy. You never know. Maybe it's something, maybe it's not. Don't go in empty-handed. Hey, it's a phone call. Maybe you talk to them at 401-228-8271. I have many people that thank me for saying, I'm so glad you told me to get some legal advice. And also, sometimes people reach out to me, and I'm very clear. Listen, I don't know what happened. I don't need to know what happened. But it sounds like you need an attorney, and I try to put them in touch. All right, let's bring her on right now. And it is Attorney Stephanie Murphy. Good afternoon, Stephanie.
Good afternoon, John.
Is it raining out?
It's pouring out there. Got soaked walking through Providence.
It is actually. No, it's a monsoon. Stephanie, I want to start off just because you and I at great length talked about the North Kingstown coach, Aaron Thomas, and pretty high, biggest high profile trial so far in the state. And what stands out to me is you were very clear that although disturbing allegations, very good defense and didn't exactly thread the needle. So I want to point out you were right when you said that you weren't convinced that the state met the burden as far as criminal charges.
Yeah. Thanks, John. I appreciate the comment. And in regards to the juries, I think the jurors did a great job of going through the elements and making sure the state proved each and every element. And like we talked about before, the sexual gratification was a required element. It was essential. So even if the jurors got a bad feeling about it, they held the state to their burden and made them, prove each and every element.
The two attorneys, could you touch on the strategy that they employed? Of which was number one, to put him on the stand. And it also seemed to be number two, that although disturbing, it wasn't to me like a denial. It was that it just didn't cross the threshold of being an actual crime, the way the law is written.
Yeah, I think the attorneys did a great job of kind of showing their case in terms of how, the defendant was thinking of it at the time. This is everything he was doing. This is all the paperwork. This is all the paper trail of what he was doing, what he believed. And by putting him on the stand, they were able to prove that. in hindsight, without him going on the stand, I don't think they would have been able to prove, that he was looking at it from a medical standpoint, that he was looking at it as, how to make these athletes better and stuff like that. We might not agree with it, but he definitely had the conversations and definitely had, some evidence to kind of point that this is how he was approaching it. And he had so many cases and so many, student athletes that he was involved with. And he kind of did similar things with all of them. So it kind of creates, this is what he was doing at that time. And like I said, definitely don't agree with it. But it's definitely, part of the defense strategy to put him on the stand to prove that. And I think without putting him on the stand, they wouldn't be able to prove kind of what he was thinking at the time, which they were able to do.
Those are, I'm also curious, any buzz in the courtroom. Those are two very skilled defense attorneys. I know John better than Mr. Calcagni, but I thought they made an interesting team. That was not an easy defense. A lot of people may have explored it a different way. I'm just curious, what was the buzz you heard from maybe some other attorneys, because that was a big case for them to win.
Yeah, I'm just so happy that they both had each other, in all honesty. They're both great attorneys, both friends of mine. But that was a really long trial. The prosecutors had two prosecutors on it. And if it was one attorney doing that for this long, I think, just getting tired or, just the day-to-day activities of this trial getting postponed. So I'm really glad they had each other. And I know, just seeing them in the hallways and talking about the case, very involved. They basically had to shut down their practice in order to handle this case. And they did a phenomenal job.
I'm also just curious, and again, folks, speaking with Attorney Stephanie Murphy, Attorney General Peter Nerone issued a statement. Obviously, the state, disappointed. I'm curious if you have any reaction to the statement released by Attorney General Peter Nerone, because let's face it, this was not the result that the state was looking for.
Yeah, I find it interesting that he gave a statement. There's so many high-profile cases in the past where if the Attorney General's office lose, they don't say anything. In this case, he decided to give a statement to the public and stuff like that. So I found it interesting because typically I see, on big cases that the defense bar wins, there's no statement given. But even the smallest victories from the prosecutors, statements given. So I find it interesting. And, as being the attorney for the people, I think it was right that he gave a statement and stuff like that. So I respect that he gave a statement in this case, even though he didn't win the case.
And as far as final question, actually, now, Coach Aaron Thomas, he does face still some legal problems. What does this do, though, or does it do anything, I should ask, to the civil? He's going to be facing some civil problems here in litigation against him. The fact that they did find him guilty, not felonies, misdemeanors, but what does that potentially do to the civil cases that he has?
Right. They did find him guilty of a simple assault. So that's just an unwanted touching or putting somebody in fear of an unwanted touching. So it's a very low misdemeanor in all honesty. But as we learned from the OJ case and other big criminal cases, it doesn't really matter what happens in the criminal case, even if you're acquitted or found not guilty. The standard is so much lower. And, these student athletes are able to show possibly damages and everything like that. So it's a whole different standard on the civil end. So I think it's great for the civil case that he was found not guilty. It definitely helps. That doesn't mean that, it's smooth sailing for him in the civil cases by any stretch of the imagination.
Folks, again, it's Attorney Stephanie Murphy. Let's talk Kare Read. I think I'd like to hear some of your thoughts, and then I have some specific questions about the case. But I'm just curious, any thoughts or anything that happened this week? Now, again, no court on Thursday, no court tomorrow. Judge says that they're actually running ahead of schedule, which is nice for a change. But I'd like to start, just any thoughts or something happened that you would have thought on, and I do have some questions.
Yeah, no, I think for this case, I'm just really interested to see the defense's case, what the defense put on, how it changed from the first case to this case. So I'm kind of just really waiting to see what the defense can kind of bring out in their case. In all honesty, I feel like things are going similar in terms of witnesses as a first case. Some weren't called, some were called, vice versa. But really what's going to be interesting is a defense's case. And I'm kind of ready to kind of get to see what they're going to present in the case.
Earlier in the week, you had an expert on the stand for the Commonwealth, for the prosecution. And then when the defense got a chance to cross him, they went after that his LinkedIn profile was not up to date. And then it turned out, I think on his company website, it said he was still going for his college degree. They kind of, made a big deal of it in court. It was a bigger deal to me outside of court. But I'm just curious, Stephanie, what is some of the dangers that either side runs into when you put some of these, quote, experts on the stand?
You have to be really careful when you're calling an expert, because first of all, to pass the threshold of being an expert is a really, really high expectation. So I think in terms of when the juries hear expert, they expect everything to be, all up to date, everything to be, all the certifications, everything to be proper. So I think that's a way to attack an expert's credibility in terms of what they're presenting to the jury without really attacking their findings. So it's just something to talk about. I say a lot of my defense cases is, as long as I'm not talking about what my client allegedly did, I could be winning the case because I'm bringing up other points. So sometimes that is part of the strategy, just to discredit an expert, or because I'm sure the defense is going to call experts to make their experts seem more qualified.
Stephanie, another week of testimony and evidence and another week of, as I call them, Karen clips. And these are these short clips of interviews that she has done, and they play them in court. And to me, it is just so powerful. It wasn't done in the first trial. I don't remember actually a trial like this. I mean, I've covered trials where they show, like the naked Aaron Thomas, they showed him at the interview at the police station, and that was recorded. But I don't recall the use of so many interviews of which the defendant was under no obligation to do. And to me, it just keeps undermining the defense, that every time they're kind of gaining ground, it's like one step forward, two steps backwards. Any thought on the most recent Karen clips that they've played?
Well, I think the most recent have been pretty damaging, just in terms of they play one part of a clip. The defense has to kind of attack those clips because there could be a larger part of the clip that maybe puts it in a better context or her in a better light. But when they're playing just a small little Karen clips, it's definitely they're pointing out the exact moment that they want to share and not really elaborating on what was said before and after. So I wonder if the defense is going to present any of it. I'm not sure how many are full exhibits, if everything's a full exhibit that they're drawing from. But if they're all full exhibits, then the jury will be able to go back and review all of them and maybe in a fuller context. And that might be something the defense attorneys will ask them to do, and maybe point out that, listen, you've heard a lot of clips in the courtroom, but everything's a full exhibit. Go back and listen to those clips in a full context of what she's discussing. I think that would be really helpful, but the short clips are pretty damaging.
Stephanie, do you have clients sometimes that deal with people who they don't fully understand the element of you have the right to remain silent? Anything you say may and will be used against you in a court of law. I've heard of people that say they had their rights read to them, and then the police start asking them questions, and they get confused, and they start answering questions. To me, these, as I call them, Karen clips, this is, to me, as much as the defense and some of her supporters cry foul, but this to me is like the textbook example of anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in terms of that, I find that people who have a criminal background understand those rights a lot better. It's the people who haven't been in trouble before that almost, when the police start talking to them, they want to help themselves. They want to get themselves out of trouble. And police will use that to their advantage to say, hey, tell me what's going on, and maybe you get to go home. Or if you don't tell me what's going on, I'm putting you. But really, the people with a criminal background, unfortunately, understand that concept a lot better. It's the first time people who are getting arrested or being questioned by the police that they understand it, they know about it, but it's hard for them to apply it to themselves because they're trying to, help themselves or get out of a situation. So it's definitely the repeat criminal people who understand it a lot better.
One final question on the Karen Read trial. A lot of people don't seem to understand. And, one of the reasons I like going to court and following things is you just learn so much by really engrossing yourself. But they don't fully understand in the first trial, it's pretty dramatic when the defense team, and they're very skilled attorneys, Alan Jackson and so forth, that they got to really cross-examine some of the witnesses, people that were at the house, the Massachusetts State Trooper Michael Proctor. The Commonwealth, the prosecution, they're not calling them. They, from what we understand, they have like one more witness, accident reconstruction. They're done. If you could just touch on, once again, people don't seem to understand that there's a world of difference when you're the prosecutor and you're calling the witness and the manner in which you can question that witness compared to the defense attorney who gets to cross-examine your witness.
No, you're absolutely right. So the biggest tool I think defense attorneys have is to be able to cross-examine witnesses, get them right after they present, open-ended questions. They have long answers to kind of get them exactly where you want them. So cross-examination, I think, is the best tool that defense attorneys can use to attack a witness or to point out inconsistencies. If the defense is going to have to call them, it's a lot different unless they become a hostile witness. And I don't know if any of those people would become a hostile witness. That would mean like refusing to answer, redirecting the question. I think these people are going to answer the questions. And I think it's going to be hard for them to get a hostile witness ruling. So therefore, they have to ask what, where, why, when questions. And you're just not making the same points at that point. So that's really, I think, where the concern will be.
And I know a number of the Karen Read supporters, they're surprised to hear that, and he may be even disappointed. But people also need to realize, Stephanie, the three witnesses in particular that seem to be focused on: Brian Albert, former Boston police officer; Brian Higgins, former ATF or still ATF; and Michael Proctor, former trooper. You're talking about three police officers who are experienced in testifying. And I believe that I don't think the defense is going to call them because I'll give you the final word, but it's very possible they could testify and leave unscathed.
Right, absolutely. And the defense is just in a problem. The one good thing is that the jurors who are seating hopefully don't know whether or not they testified in the first trial. They don't really know. So if the Commonwealth doesn't call them, defense attorneys can argue, because the burden is on the Commonwealth, that where are these witnesses? Why aren't you hearing from them? What are they hiding? And that kind of goes along with the theme that the defense has. So I think the defense has two choices. They can use it as, what is the Commonwealth hiding? Or here are the witnesses, the state didn't call them. Why are we having to call them? The burden's on them to prove it. So I think they can make arguments either way. So it'll be interesting if they call them. If they do they call all three of them, just one of them, and how they do with the direct examination.
Folks, again, it's Attorney Stephanie Murphy. And Stephanie, it did pop in the news, and I had heard from one of our followers and viewers in North Providence. FBI, that always gets everyone's attention. FBI visits North Providence. What does it tell you that if there's, and I think people need to realize this, that sometimes we don't know if there's a crime. I believe there's a disgruntled former worker, but my understanding, it's very possible that if there was some criminal wrongdoing, and we don't know if there was, but that there are certain laws that may be more applicable for the feds to get involved as opposed to North Providence Police or even the Rhode Island State Police.
Yeah, absolutely. So feds tend to get involved in kind of the bigger cases, or cases where they can investigate over state lines and stuff like that, or anything having to do with payments to the federal government, taxes, stuff like that. So it's interesting. I believe they've come twice to investigate and talk to different people at the fire department. But right now it is just an investigation. We really don't have much information about what's going on. But I don't think it's that uncommon that the FBI is investigating, municipalities, towns, state government officials, stuff like that. I think that's part of their role and part of their job. And, I'm glad to see they're out there investigating and, trying to, piece everything together, whatever it might be.
Folks, it's time for Murphy's Law. This is a story that Attorney Stephanie Murphy has found for us this week. And Stephanie, what do you have?
So it's not too much of a story, just wanted to make your listeners aware of a program that Rhode Island offers. So we get a lot of phone calls from different people who are either in the military or have served in the military. And I don't think many people really realize that we have a veterans court program for people who get charged with criminal charges. So I get a lot of questions about it and stuff like that. I just wanted to talk about it because I think there are so many people who are in the military or former military that might suffer from PTSD or anything involved with their military service. And there's a great program in district court that I just think more people should take advantage of. And so many people, get charged, whether it's domestics, whether it's DUIs. And I think it would be great for, more people to know about the program, because if you're a veteran or in the service, you can definitely apply for the program. And I always have a great experience when I'm there. My clients walk away so happy that someone told them about it. So not really a story, but just kind of a good thing that Rhode Island offers, just to bring some good news into the news.
No, definitely a very valuable tip. Folks, again, she's Attorney Stephanie Murphy. Stephanie, excellent job as always. Stay dry. We'll talk to you next week.
Thanks, John. Bye.
All right, folks, there it is. Attorney Stephanie Murphy right here on the John DePietro Show. Now, I'm going to dive in a little bit into the Kare Read trial. Just a reminder again, I'm going to be live, Fox Nation, streaming 3 to 4 this afternoon with Paul Morrow, filling in Emily Campagna. I also did podcast for Fox News True Crime. And then tonight, Court TV Live, 8 to 9 with Vinnie Politan talking Kare Read. I'm going to talk about the Kare Read trial right now. Folks, remember, Stephanie Murphy, she's fantastic. Contact her, especially you're a woman. A lot of women like to deal with other women. 401-228-8271. I share their Facebook page, Marin, Barrett, and Murphy. Now, right now at 1:24 on this very rainy, stormy Thursday, I want to get back on schedule here. But folks, I want to thank Propane Plus. Now, this weekend kicks off all of your, cookouts and so forth. Propane Plus, heating and cooling. Call them 401-885-4209. In Massachusetts, 508-252 3359 for Propane Plus Heating and Cooling. They have a great user-friendly website. You can depend on Propane Plus, residential or commercial, 24/7. The Johnson family, folks, 3 generations, Propane Plus. Call them 401-885-4209 in Massachusetts, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. I also want to use this rainy day as a reminder. If today you have a leaky roof, call Roof Co. Rhode Island. Let them come out. Free estimate, free inspection of your leaky roof. Maybe you have wind damage. 401-868-7149. Sam sent me an email. Whenever it rains, we have to put buckets out around the house where the leaks. Sam, doesn't have to be that way. Be bucket free. Call them. Free estimate. Let them come out. Look at the roof. 401-868-7149. Roof Rhode Island. Do free wind damage, missing lifted curled shingles, granules in the gutter, damaged chimney flashing. 401-868-7149. Let's talk a little bit about Kare Read. No court today. I am telling you, court resumes Tuesday. I will be in the courtroom Tuesday and all next week as we continue our coverage of this very interesting trial. Dr. Wolf, the neurosurgeon who flew up from Miami and testified, I believe he didn't testify in the first trial. I believe Dr. Wolf possibly cemented a conviction against Kare Read with his testimony. The guy was unimpeachable. He looked like out of central casting. If you want to really know what happened with the Kare Read case, you have to go online, type in, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or what, Dr. Wolf. He looked like, if you were going to cast a television show or a film and you wanted a brain surgeon, if he walked in, you'd say that there he is. He looked the part. He explained it very easy to understand. I want to be very clear. I'm not interested in debating people that refuse to look at the obvious. There are some people out there on social media who I think they're obviously very knowledgeable. And they put out things that sometimes through their experience, they can just sum them up very effectively for everyone else. And one of them is someone put a lot of the Kare Read people, every time they hear a piece of evidence, they act like it's isolated in a bubble and they won't look at things collectively. I want to just say the exact line, because there's also someone in X, Grant Ellis, who I thought it sounds like he has found something that is very newsworthy. But I want to make sure, and I'll give them credit. I thought he was phenomenal. I'll explain why. There's an attorney, Matt Timpanik, probably the single most devastating piece of evidence the Commonwealth had, microscopic pieces of Read's taillight embedded in John O'Keefe's clothing. There's your corroboration of a pedestrian strike. When you see the red, and I said it last night on Court TV, when you see the red and you're in the courtroom, the jury knows what that is. It's the red taillight. They've seen the pieces of it. By the way, last night, I was on Court TV with Vinny and then this nurse, Nurse Kim, I think is her name. She said it's impossible to drive from 34 Fairview back to John's house in Meadows, because if you type in Waze, it says it takes 6 minutes. Listen, that is ludicrous. If you think the mindset of Kare Read as she's leaving those vicious, violent voicemails, John, I blank and hate you, and screaming, does that sound like someone who was probably going the speed limit? Does that sound like someone who was going 25 miles an hour? There was no one on the road. really just lightly snowing at that point. There wasn't like a full-fledged blizzard that was coming. Kare Read, if you're going to put it in neutral, which the Commonwealth says, and reverse it, floor it backwards in an event with that car, going backwards, 24 miles an hour, there's no way she's going 25 miles an hour back home. She floored it on the way home. And people have done that ride, and you can do it in under 4 minutes. So it absolutely lines up. Now, if you drive like a little church lady at 25 miles an hour and you're stopping at the lights and you're slowly going like that, you could maybe drag it out to about 5 minutes. But she wasn't going 25. She was most likely going north of 40 miles an hour. But I want to find the vital testimony. Dr. Wolf testified the lack of a depressed skull fracture, more likely than not, rules out he was beaten to death by a blunt weapon such as a bat or hammer. That is exactly right. And this guy, he's the real deal. He's doing, you know what he's doing today? Or maybe they're already done? Brain surgeries in Miami, of all places. He was tan. It was a very expensive European suit he had on. I mean, he looks like out of Central Casting. He looks like Jonas Salk. He looked like, the white-haired doctor. He looked like Albert Einstein. He was phenomenal. The doctor confirmed John O'Keefe wasn't beaten up by anybody. He destroyed the conspiracy. I want to find what, okay. There's someone online, anonymous mass lawyer, and he wrote, "It's amazing to me how free Kare Read folks don't understand the concept of cumulative evidence. Their reaction to every piece of bad evidence for Karen is pretend there's no other evidence exists and assert that the new evidence in isolation doesn't prove she's guilty." That is perfectly said. Absolutely perfectly said. Everything is treated that way. Everything of her supporters is treated, and all they say is, well, that doesn't prove that she murdered anybody. That doesn't prove blah, blah, blah. It's cumulative. Most crimes, most homicides are not captured on video. It doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means it wasn't captured. But then when you look at everything in a cumulative fashion, the story pieces together. And I want to talk about what I think, what the doctor said. And I see these people posting things that, like, how do you say that? There's no way he could have died by being struck by a vehicle. What makes you an expert to say that? I think it's interesting. Since COVID, there's so many people the past couple of years, they dismiss all experts. Nobody knows anything anymore. They know everything. Or they go online to find people that they deem experts, that basically are people who will just tell them what they want to hear. And then it just becomes an echo chamber. So, but I want to remind you, Kids Club on the Pike. Folks, call them, reserve the spot for your child or grandchild. Kids Club on the Pike. Are you familiar with this? You really want to visit it. It is perfect for a birthday party venue or a youth team. It's built, Kids Club on the Pike, right off of 295 on the Cranston-Johnson line. It's perfect for children. It's built for children. They do offer before and after school care. They do have preschool, but they have a great summer camp program. But it fills up. Reserve the spot for your child or grandchild, maybe for a week, maybe for a month, maybe for the whole summer. Kids Club on the Pike, right on Plainfield Pike, off of 295. Call them 401-443-5336. At least reserve the spot for your child. Summer camp with Kids Club on the Pike. And I also want to point out how fantastic they are. Back in April, I spoke at a school for reading week, and the kids were just fantastic. And it's a fun age. The kids were, I think, like 4, 5, maybe 6. So funny. And they see me. It was in an urban district. They see me in their neighborhoods. One of the kids afterwards said, "Hey, we saw when you arrested my uncle." I said, "I didn't arrest your uncle. I was with the police and they arrested your uncle." And he's like, no, my mommy said you didn't do it. No, I didn't. I like that. Hey, we were watching. You arrested my uncle. But anyhow, I gave out water bottles. And you know who sponsored the Kids Club on the Pike? I called Kristen and she said, done. How many do you need? I said, there's 110 kids. And they packed them in an auditorium. And I read to them. And I also told them to respect the police. As a matter of fact, the kids were terrific. The teachers were great. But it was funny. But Kids Club on the Pike. Do you see what I'm saying? I called Kristen and said, I'm going to speak at a school. I want to give all the kids something. And she said, I'll do water bottles. And boom, it went from there. Kids Club on the Pike. All right. Staying on schedule. All right. The rain is going to stop at some point. And this weekend, Memorial Day weekend, I'm going to talk about the Kare Read trial. And this is really important. PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. They're going to be open all weekend long. Listen, the rain will stop at some point. Annuals, perennials, tree shrubs, family-run business. They're fantastic. Debbie, Steve, Junior, Byron, Lauren. PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. I share their Facebook page. Hanging impatiens, pansy, marigold bags, large selection of beautiful patio pots, vegetable plants and herbs, tropical mandevillas, and hibiscus plants. Full-scale nursery. They're open 7 days a week. Look for them on Facebook. Right off Route 4. It's PR Landscape Materials and Garden Center. Dr. Wolf, to me, was so impressive because he laid out for the jury, and I'm talking about the Kare Read case, and he laid out basically what happened. And it was pretty horrifying. And you also realize that John O'Keefe was alive after he was struck. Let me just be very clear. What's going to happen next week in the trial, and I'm going to be in court next week, is they're going to bring in an accident reconstruction expert who hopefully has his LinkedIn profile up to date, and he's going to put on a presentation to show exactly what they believed happened. But what I thought was most damaging about the doctor yesterday, he was a doctor in the past in Minneapolis. He did deal, he talked about, they dealt with patients that experienced trauma in cold and ice. It is true. You can get a concussion if you fall back on the ice. I've had concussions before. I received a concussion when I was in a car accident. When I was in high school, I was not the driver, had a concussion, wake up, didn't know, really remember initially what happened, knocked out briefly. And then with the Charlotte Lester case, when Perkins hit me in the back of the head with a pipe, and then I fell backwards on the sand, right? He's got the lawnmower. He cut my legs underneath. I fell back and I cracked the back of my head on the pavement with the Charlotte Lester case. And then at Kent Hospital, I was diagnosed with a concussion. Now, that was falling onto the pavement. So in this video, well, there's not a video of that because he destroyed my live stream and recording equipment. But Ladybug was there. But I did have a concussion. I was deemed, I had a concussion that night. Next day, they monitored me. I went through, they do the MRI, they do all the different tests, and they said, you suffered a concussion from tonight. And the back of my head hurt. I had a big lump. There could have been a little bit of blood, not a lot, but that was, he put the lawnmower underneath my feet, and then there was sand, and I fell backwards. So I had a concussion, but I wasn't knocked out. I was dazed. I was stunned. But what you have to understand is what the doctor described yesterday, Dr. Wolf in court, is this is someone in an event heavily driven to the ground. John O'Keefe didn't slip and fall back. This is a motion where it's gravity, where he is literally flying to the ground. Boom, the impact to the ground. So much like, and we talk about, there's a fight outside, and then someone is punched. This happened in Providence a couple of years ago behind Coliseum nightclub. And in the parking lot, you have, whatever you call it, the parking things that stand up, and it shows that's a parking space, and whatever the hell we call that. the parking thing. And the guy, he fell back and hit his head on that, and he died. It was terrible. He was brain dead. But that was a punch knocking him, boom, like back with force. But the testimony from Dr. Wolf, this wasn't, well, maybe John O'Keefe slipped and fell backwards and hit his head. This was, he was projected back. And let's just stand back for a moment, folks. I mean, for crying out loud, and I'm very patient, I am, and I try to be reasonable. But some people, either your mind doesn't work properly, or you're purposely not trying to see the obvious, which is you have an SUV that weighs 6,000 pounds, Lexus, backing up at a high rate of speed, 24 miles an hour. You have a broken taillight. And then you have him, the boyfriend, projected backwards into the ground. And there are still people saying, it doesn't prove that she's, like, what world are you living in? What are you talking about? I'm not saying you have to be Columbo or like, this is ludicrous. What do you think happened? That's not reasonable doubt. Reasonable doubt. You have a better shot of saying a spaceship landed and knocked him. Like, what do you think? What do you think, he was climbing a tree? Like, all these whatabouts. What about if a plow came along? What if a spaceship landed and the Martians pinned him down? What if a helicopter came by? What are you talking? Maybe he climbed a tree and fell. Why was he be climbing a tree? What about maybe she floored it and clipped him, and his right arm got scraped by the taillight? And keep in mind, he's found in an area with his debris of red taillight. And there's a tiny fabric that you need with a microscope in his clothing that happens to match the taillight. Like, what are you talking about? This is not even that difficult. But it seemingly is only difficult for those that continue to chase the false things that don't have anything. But again, I'm not trying to convince anybody, because how do you ignore that? I thought this Dr. Wolf, I thought he was very powerful and a very strong witness and so credible. And he talked about a third of patients. And this is really important. And this is where the murder 2 comes in, by the way. This is where the murder 2 comes in. It's very possible after Karen Read hit him that he was brain dead. No one's talked about that. We talk about the hypothermia. They talk about how his body temperature dropped to 80 degrees. This doctor explained at 95, so your body temperature is 98.6. And let's just say you get a fever. When we're out on road patrol, we'll hear, someone calls, their daughter, whoever, has 102 fever. They call for a rescue. Well, 95 degrees is when hypothermia sets in. John O'Keefe's body temperature dropped to 80 Degrees. That's, as the Dr. Wolf described it, as severe hypothermia. What happens with severe hypothermia? The organs start shutting down. Heart everything starts shutting down. Certainly doesn't help the situation. It's very possible that after Karen Read backed into him, and that is the contention, you have a neurosurgeon, brain surgeon on the stand and saying that the back of his head, and it wasn't from a pipe, and it wasn't from a barbell, and it wasn't, no, because then there'd be like a dent in the head. No, this is from, boom, like a hard surface, like a frozen ground, head first. It's very possible, and I haven't heard anyone say this, that even if she had called 911 right then, let's say Karen Read said, oh my God, or maybe someone in the house said, hey, did you see that? And called 911. It's very possible that John O'Keefe, even if, boom, they jump into action, and Brian Higgins was an Army medic, and they get the rescue right away and get him, it's very possible he could have been brain dead right from that. So you haven't heard that discussed. However, what we learn is, and the doctor explained this, he was probably awake. I thought Dr. Wolf, who testified yesterday, if you want to see it, just Google it and you'll get his testimony. The guy was an A-plus witness. A-plus. I sit through a lot of witnesses. Some stand out more than others. He stands out. He talked about, in a situation like that, when someone is knocked down, it's not like you, boom, like you're immediately dead. It doesn't happen. The body is moving a little bit. So when Kare Read says he didn't look mortally wounded when after she hit him and she sees him, I think what she means is he seemed to be moving, but that's the body reflexing. So as the doctor explained, it seems very likely that Officer John O'Keefe was in and out of consciousness initially, maybe tried to get up. And then it's also, and it's terrible to listen to, he was probably awake and he can hear people leaving. He hears her leave. He hears cars pulling away, and he's just lying there, unable to yell, unable to get up and help himself, unable to do anything. He's just lying there, and then the temperature's dropping, and the temperature's dropping more. And now he's freezing, and the hours are going by, and now it's snowing. What a slow, painful death that he experienced. And I am telling you right now, I think he was a very powerful witness. It's more excruciating. I haven't heard anyone say that it's very possible that he could have been brain dead. Now that happens. There are people that they're kept alive, and I don't like to talk about it because it's so tough. But there's different accidents and scenes we cover where the person is in essence brain dead. Many, many years ago, I interviewed Jim Tarracani, NBC 10 investigative reporter, and he talked about it. He got a heart transplant, and there was a young man. I don't remember exactly what happened, but a young man, I think whatever happened, I think could have been a motorcycle, but he was brain dead. And as a result of that, the rest of this kid's body was fine. His heart was pumping, everything was fine, but he was brain dead. He was never going to wake up and be normal. So Jim Tarracani lived because they did a heart transplant. He got the heart of that young man. And so that this does happen where people are. I've covered different stories where there is someone and they are deemed brain dead. We don't like to think about it. They're essentially a vegetable. It's very possible he was never going to wake up. But it's very possible right then when she backed up and hit him that he was essentially brain dead. So then even if he was rushed to the hospital, he may have recovered, maybe he wasn't going to recover. You had Jamal Gonzalez. He was at Spalding Institute. They moved him. Remember, he had the moped October 2020, and that stop sign fell onto his head. And he did recover after being at Spalding, but it was a long recovery. And I'm not convinced. I don't know if he's ever going to be exactly the same. But my point is, I believe that Dr. Wolf, who testified, I thought he was a very compelling witness. And when you're a brain surgeon flies up from Miami, I don't hear anyone talking about his LinkedIn profile. But I don't understand the people that after that doctor just continue to say there's no way he didn't die from injuries consistent with a vehicle strike. Well, that's technically true. It's not like she used a Lexus to hit him in the back of the head, but that doesn't mean it didn't happen that way. Jamal Gonzalez, his biggest problem was when the stop sign fell on his head. And his accident, remember, that was on Elmwood Avenue. That wasn't consistent with crashing into a wall. It was, boom, the stop sign falling like that. Folks, this portion of the program brought to you by Arch Design Builders. Call them today, 401-207-4124. 4124. Arch Design Builders, whether it's a kitchen or a bathroom or a basement or a deck. Arch Design Builders. It all starts with the phone call, because I'm very confident when you meet with Ed and Roxanne, you're going to say, I have come to the right place. Arch Design Builders. And meet with them, show them the space, and then they can tell you what they can do for you. 401 218 9707. 401 218 9707 for Arch Design Builders. And they have great social media presence on both Facebook and Instagram, and always online at their website. But you call them and set up that phone call at 401 218 9707. I think you're just going to find them fantastic. You can find them online at archdesignbuildersri.com, but they are tremendous. 5-star, custom made. What a remarkable project that they're going to do for your home. And you know what else? If you're thinking of having them over, I'd be happy to join you, because I love them so much, and watch them and even do and film like a before and after. That's how confident I am of their tremendous work. Well, folks, good afternoon on this very rainy Thursday. Again, I still have I'm going to be live with Fox Nation coming up 3 to 4, and then Court TV live tonight from 8 to 9. And I'll admit, last night, if I wanted to, and in the past, I probably would have mixed it up a little bit more. But if someone wants to just continue with, the timeline doesn't add up and blah, 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 and the steps, and I'm just at a point where I'm not going to, go into and try to, to me, that's all just noise. It's all just noise. I think they've put on a very, very strong case of what happened. I think the microscopic fiber from the taillight in his clothing. And I admit, I don't understand these people that just continue to say, Michael Proctor. I'm telling you right now, Michael Proctor in this retrial is not a factor. You can complain all you want. You can cry all you want. He's not a factor. He hasn't been in the courtroom. They say his name, but they say a lot of names, and it just floats in and out. That's not what makes an impression on a jury. When I've covered different cases, that's not a name thrown out is not what, seals the deal, so to speak. Michael Proctor in the first trial, I was in court and they made him read the text. That was pretty powerful. And Alan Jackson, AJ roasted him, crushed him, brutal. And Lally just sat there. He's not a factor in this trial. I don't know how else to explain that. How else can I explain that? He's not a factor in the trial. There are some things that have been very powerful. If you just step back and you're neutral, there's been a lot of compelling evidence with this retrial. Hank Brennan, and you know what else? And I want to mention this about Hank Brennan. But first, folks, Matunic Oyster Bar. You saw what happened, right? Matunic Oyster Bar. What they need to do is call ServPro or Providence. If they haven't already, I know the owner, and I did contact him and said, you need to call ServPro or Providence. That's what I would do. Disaster struck Matunic Oyster Bar. Fire. Destroyed the place. Gone for the season. Call them. Call ServPro or Providence when disaster strikes. Fire. Then now all the water damage of trying to put the fire out. Plus then mold developed. ServPro of Providence. Fast, thorough, professional. 401-941-5500. Water damage, fire, mold, maybe storm recovery today. If you have water damage after today, 2 to 3 inches of rain, ServPro of Providence. 401-941-5500. Now, let's see. Catherine sent me an email. Catherine's mom is a veteran, and Catherine and her husband would like to surprise her mom with a paved driveway, and heard me mention a company that is a special package for veterans. Catherine, contact J. Perry Paving. They have a special package for veterans. Folks, this weekend, Memorial Day, call them. High quality, fair pricing, exceptional service, free estimate. So if you're listing right now and you're thinking of getting a driveway paved or a parking lot, J. Perry Paving, 401-732-1730. They're another one. They have a good social media presence, but especially they have a special package for veterans. Letter J, J. Perry Paving, 401-732-1730. 1730, 401-732-1730 for letter J, J. Perry Paving. Now, Grant, if you're on X, he's putting out what he believes is a recording of Kare Read asking Jen McCabe to Google house long to die in the cold. Now, I don't know. See how, I don't know what to make of that. He's put it out there. I did hear it. It sounds pretty compelling. I'm going to leave that. That's Grant's. That's not mine. I use my perspective. I try to deal in reality. I'll say this. I am, folks, like so many other things. It's not that tough. Just talking about the Read trial. Let me talk about Hank Brennan for a moment, though. So remember, the trial has two different parts. And Kare Read, again, no court today, no court tomorrow. The jury gets a nice 5-day break. And it's long. And I think they deserve and they're entitled. Everybody needs a break. So, but the thing that they took with them over the Memorial weekend was Dr. Wolf. But what people need to understand, Kare Read said, well, we're very anxious to put on our case. And they are going to get a chance to put on their case. But what I am telling you that I am looking forward to, that is waiting in the wings, and that is that Hank Brennan has demonstrated, the special prosecutor Hank Brennan, who's very skilled, he's the king of the court. He is the king of the courtroom. He's the most effective attorney in the courtroom. Last trial, it was Alan Jackson, not this trial, not in the Read trial. It's Hank Brennan. Hank Brennan is going to carve up the defense witnesses. Hank Brennan is going to get to cross whoever these experts are that they're going to put on the stand. Wait till you see the former Rhode Island medical examiner telling you right now, wait till this lady hits the stand. I know who that lady is. As I've talked about, Station nightclub fire. She was the state medical examiner, never went to the scene. 100 dead. They were calling her every hour, and she kept saying, I'll be there. She never went to the scene. I don't know what the deal is. She got crushed in the final report aftermath on the Station nightclub fire. Crushed. She's going to be the medical examiner expert. I can't wait to see what Hank Brennan is going to have a field day with this lady. And if they want to bring these ARCA guys back, listen, it's much easier to be on the offensive. It's much easier to be cross-examining. Much easier. He's going to crucify the defense witnesses. They're going to have to just sit there and take it. It is really going to be awesome. All right. Now, later this afternoon, just quick reminder, quality asphalt seal coating. Call Corey to get your basketball court, tennis court resurfaced. 401-283-9815. I share their page on Facebook. Quality asphalt seal coating. 401-283-9815. Coming up, if you stream Fox Nation, I'm going to be live with Paul Morrow, 3 to 4. Court TV tonight. Now, we're back on the radio tomorrow at 11, and we'll see what develops with the Kare Read trial. I want to thank Gian. Great job, everyone. Thank you to the great Stephanie Murphy. I'll see you 1 hour from now, streaming live. There's I think you can sign up for free on Fox Nation. On the radio, stay tuned for the 2 o'clock news.